Welcome back to the channel. I am Sister Kate, and this is Shofar Mountain. This video deals with the idea that we preppers are silly, that the media wants to portray us as extreme, and that we are unreasonable and irrational. But if you look at the idea of prepping with the backdrop of a natural disaster like Helene, then prepping doesn't seem like such a bad idea, does it? And this is not to fault any of the people who were victims of Helene, because we don't control the weather. The weathermen don't fix the weather. They try to anticipate it, but even then the weather can change from whatever they predicted. So I don't blame the people caught in a natural disaster. It happens. And I am sure the people of Appalachia had their preps. Like, they grow up in a hard scrabble area. Of course, grandma taught them how to can things. And of course, they have gardens. And of course, they go hunting. And I'm sure they had all of that. And so they're still caught. They're caught by this set of events. And this water, which I've said in many, many videos, water is the power of water, especially going downhill. You cannot overestimate it. It's so strong and it can move so much. Take whole houses right off their foundations, knock trees over, these 30-foot floods tore roads apart. I mean, you just can't overestimate how much damage running water can do. So we need to take a lesson from each natural disaster, whether we're in it or not. And for this one, your daily preps probably wouldn't have saved you, but it would be the ideal to have the bug out location, to have alternate areas where you also have preps, which is a little bit deeper prepper idea, not just that, where I live has extra water and food and tools and whatever, but that I have extra water, tools, clothes, valuables even, in different locations. And clearly, in this particular event of Helene, when you're in mountainous areas, downhill, downriver, obviously would not have been an excellent choice, because that is where the flooding was. So if you live on mountains, mountain living. Anyway, up higher is probably going to be the safer area for you to stash extra preps, up higher than where you are, but also away from areas where the water is still going to run. It's not going to do you any good to have your preps uphill, higher up on your mountain, if it's in an area where the creek bed is, or where obvious water runoffs are, where is the ravines, where the water's carved it. Not going to be the place to put your preps. It's going to be on, a flat, clear area with the water running away from where your preps are, not your preps here and the water running down into where your preps are. That would be a better way of doing it, because when you think of the obstacles that these people have towards returning to normal, where entire roads could be washed out for hundreds of feet, and you're obviously not going to be able to take your vehicle down that road. But if you can walk, then you can walk down the road. If your preps are uphill from you, you have to think, I may have to walk up to them. If your vehicle gets damaged, if a tree falls on it, if a tree falls in front of it, do you have a chainsaw to clear your driveway or your road, and will the road up to your preps be washed out as well? So, what are my alternate travel arrangements? How am I going to get uphill to what I have stored up there? And be ready to use your feet. A bicycle, livestock if they survive the flood, scooters, you can decide for yourself what that might be. But one other thing that would help people in the situation where you have no cell towers, you have no power poles, you have, let's see, no electric lines. If you had propane and it stayed intact, because they showed a whole propane tank floating down a river in some of the news stories from Helene. If you had a propane tank and it was intact, and you also had like a camp stove or, what am I trying to say? Like the propane tank attached to your heater, the propane tank attached to a propane stove. That's one alternative that might work when the power's out, right? As long as none of that got washed away. If it's right near your house and gets washed away, it does you no good. But if you have in your alternate prep a couple of propane tanks, the small ones, maybe even the little camp size ones, and one of those propane camp stoves, now you have an alternate way to cook your food. If you have one of those propane tank heating units, I think a lot of times they're meant for the outdoors because you got to be careful of the fumes. You could at least have that outside, like on your back porch, and sit around it to keep warm. I mean, I'm thinking just a regular fire would probably be equally as warm for you. But for the power, now that's took care of your cooking, but the power could be done by a solar generator, and they are very new to the prepping scene. They've only been around, in my knowledge, a few years. But the thing about them is they're going to work every day that it's sunny. You don't have to plug them into any power source at all. You just have to have the actual unit itself, which is usually some kind of battery inside a plastic cover, and then some outlet places where you can plug in like a lamp or your cell phone or your computer. And I get it. If you have one of those and you have charged up your cell phone, but there's no towers, maybe it's not as useful to you in the first couple of days. But once communications do get restored, then you can know that your phone is fully charged and your computer is fully charged. And you can, like, people are bringing Starlink hookups. So there is, that kind of communication there. You can start using your devices to get the information that you need. The other thing a solar generator can power, I already said one was a lamp. It can power things like a set of LED lights. You can buy them from Amazon. They only use like 3 amps of power and they're pretty bright. So you could light your whole house with those things, but it will run a refrigerator for several hours. What other electric things would you be using? But you would have your basic solar stuff. You could probably charge up your radios, get ready to, connect with the outside world through your Baofeng radio, your FRS radio, talk to emergency services over whatever comms devices you have aside from your cell phone. It's not great to use them for heaters because heaters use a lot of power. But if your electric is down and you're hot, you can run a fan, and especially if you buy the smaller fans that will be plugged in by USB port, you can run one of those off your solar generator. So think about just a little bit of stuff stored somewhere else that will be safe in an emergency in your area. If your area has fires, then it needs to be fire safe, probably buried underground. If it's, something flooding, you don't want this stuff to be in a low ground, you want it to be on a high ground, that sort of thing. But just a little extra food, some water, some change of clothes, and some power and some way to cook could make a huge difference in an emergency for you and your family. Thanks for watching the video, you all. Bless you. Shalom. I got to get out there and do stuff.